We had a number of positions that were still open at the start of the school year, and we weren't able to get substitute teachers for them. So a lot of teachers didn't get the planning time that they would normally have when, say, their kids were in gym or their kids were in art, because there wasn't an art teacher or there wasn't a technology teacher. So, teachers, what do you do when that happens? If you don't have a teacher or a substitute, kids have to go somewhere. So the teachers cover each other's classes. Or another way we would do it is, everybody take, 7 extra kids. We did a lot of juggling and moving things around due to the teacher shortage and teacher absences.
We were without a science teacher for 2.5 years, even before the pandemic, because we couldn't find anyone to hire. We had our social emotional counselor position open for multiple years without being able to find someone. We have had shortages at our district even before that. It was always hard to find subs. We were always giving up our plan to go and sub, even way before the pandemic. This upcoming school year, I found out last week that we had 2 more openings, so we're up to 7 or 8 openings in my district, and there's only like 35 teachers, 40 teachers.
Teachers feel a lot of pressure to continue to try to close the learning gaps in their students, whether it's, academically or socially. I know it was hard for a lot of my colleagues, the fear of when you do go back in person, and then how am I going to get to know kids, and make connections with them when you can't see their faces. And a lot of that stuff is things that people that aren't teachers don't think about. But, when you're working with kids, it's different than, I'm working with colleagues that have to wear a mask. I mean, we rely on being able to build relationships with our students in order to teach them effectively and do right by them. And that was hard, starting the school year with only seeing, eyes with the kids.
Their main issue was the inability to stay focused or on task. They would work for like 5 minutes and then they would need a break. Or, I would write a sentence and then I needed a break. And I'm like, class is 45 minutes. So you can't take all these breaks.
They love using their devices. They like using those to learn. You take the same thing and incorporate it where they can use their iPads. They're much more excited about doing it. They still, they do like the hands-on, we're working on getting the social piece with that, but they do love anything where they can do something and interact with it. They like when something we're learning can obviously relate to something that's going on in the world. They always enjoy that immensely. They love field trips and learning outside of the formal classroom. Our students, and this is actually a positive, our students have one-to-one device use in the classroom. Prior to the pandemic, we didn't. Our students didn't have a lot of exposure to technology. They didn't have device. They don't have their own devices at home, many of them. And, we had a cart per grade level, and maybe you get 30 minutes to teach them some technology skills and utilize, simulations and such, maybe 30 minutes once a week. So prior to the pandemic, our district didn't have the resources to provide that for the students. But then, during that second half or part of that pandemic, when all the funding became available and all these districts that were lacking in that area, were able to get these devices for the students so that they could learn remotely. But the benefit is, we still have those devices. And so we've been able to teach kids to be competitive, with their higher income suburbs in the area and be able to compete and utilize those technology skills. So, for our district, that's been a very positive income that came from the pandemic.
They used to just be like automatically like, oh, okay, we're doing a lesson. I'm just going to sit there and do it. Now it's like I have to convince them to pay attention to my lesson, convince them that this is important to their lives. So it's a lot of trying to mix up my phenomenons, my hooks to get students engaged.
COVID impacted my ability to implement the program mainly due to student attendance, with all the different rules for, who had to quarantine, how much you had to quarantine. I just felt like it was just a revolving door of kids in and out, either due to them getting sick, and a lot of them did. Even prior to that, then it was, they had to stay home because their mom had it. So then they had to quarantine. And so for that, the challenge was, we had a specific plan for, implementing the program, and when we were going to do different things along the way to, do the letters and the lessons. And, it was hard because then I'd always have this group of kids that, then I had to do theirs a little bit differently because, they missed the letter opening day, or, you try to be flexible and maybe delay it a little bit. Then you're waiting, an extra 10 days for them to come back so they can finish their letter. And so that was difficult.
Their writing skills. That was a big issue with this year. Them being unable to write a full sentence, me being unable to read their handwriting. If I can't read it, your pen pal will not be able to read it. So it was a lot of having to slow down and actually think about letters as they were writing them. That was the biggest issue because they just could not write well.